Hey, everybody.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message. I love you. Now, back to our show.
It's rental car time in Alaska with Chuck and Deb. And today we're going to talk about being married and walking in faith together. So, hon, we've walked a long time together and lived out our faith and did some pretty crazy things. What are some crazy faith ventures that we've been on together?
Well, I think the first one that comes to mind is when we had a 2-year-old and a 2-month-old and left the military with no visible means of support to go to a different state and pursue something we felt like God was calling us to do. So,
cool. What's another one?
I remember at one point we were involved in a ministry where we needed more room, but we were getting ready to retire, and basically we needed more space, so we wanted to add on to our house, and it didn't make sense financially, but we felt like God was calling us to do it.
Mm-hmm. And one more.
Okay. Probably the latest, or one of the latest, is when we sold everything, packed up our RAV, and moved to San Antonio.
Yeah, so that's pretty crazy when you think about it. And this video is specifically for wives trying to follow a crazy guy. And what should they do when they encounter these kind of requests to follow you in faith? So, hon, what was that like, and how did you deal with that?
Well, most of these decisions were amoral. They weren't right or wrong, but they did require a large step of faith. And so I felt like I had to trust you and trust God to make things right, even though maybe things didn't make sense logically or logistically. And so it was like I had to have faith in your faith that you had heard from God, and this was the way He wanted us to go.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, was that easy for you? How did you go through that process?
No, not easy at all. I think one of the things that was helpful is you were very patient, and you would communicate. You know, we were dialoguing about these things long before we actually took the step of faith. And you kind of brought me up to speed, so to speak. Your faith was high, my faith was not. But then as we talked, you, and also, you know, I'm in the Word. God is telling me, hey, you need to trust me. And so through communication with you and with God, I'm slowly coming to the conclusion that you've come to way before I have, maybe.
Okay. And what would you say would be probably my role? You talked a little bit about that, but a husband's role in leading their wives in these faith ventures.
Well, I think, you know, first off, you know, if the husband is really following Jesus, you know, then it's a lot easier to trust when, you know, I hear you saying, I think God is calling us to do this. And it's not, you know, the litmus test is it, you know, immoral? No, it's not. It's going to require faith, you know, probably. But then, you know, it's like, well, you know, following Jesus is really living a life of faith, but we don't often find ourselves in that situation. So maybe it's not as common, you know, in our culture as, you know, people just don't step out in faith very much. Mm-hmm. So it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. So is every wife or mom cut out to live this kind of life?
Well, I think every Christian should be cut out to live this life. They just, you have a choice on whether or not you really want to live a life of faith or if you want to play it safe. And, a lot of times we call it, this is where the rubber meets the road. Are you really going to trust God? Because, it seems like it's not going to work out in our minds when we've done all the mental gymnastics. So we have to trust God that He's going to make it right.
Mm-hmm. What about gals that are not married yet? What advice would you have for them?
Yeah, calculated risk. But if you see evidence of the person who you think you might be, marrying, you see evidence of them obeying what Jesus is telling them, and they either have or in the past have made steps of faith where they are trusting God and they have a track record, that's super helpful. Especially if you know that you're going to be, teaming up and doing this together, because you don't want to be, going into a relationship not knowing whether or not that person is really following Jesus for real.
Yeah, good. So wise words from a Proverbs 31 woman. Very important. All right, I hope that's helpful. If it has been, pass it on to your friends, and until next time, keep making disciples until there's no place left.